Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Arsh, Ellahi, and I'm here with our very good friend this evening, and I think a few of you know him as the famous Jim Haliburton, or the HMO Daddy. Jim, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for signing in. Looking forward to talking to you, and let's hear some questions.
Just so that I know that we've got everyone online, can you, just in the bottom right-hand corner, just say yes or no, that you can hear us both very clearly so that we know that we're all good to go? Right, okay.
Well, you've got Wayne listening in.
Oh, hello, Wayne. How you doing, my friend? And anyone that knows Wayne actually works with Jim, so good to have you here. Right, okay. If you can just have a few more people just letting us know whether they're on board and they can hear everything that we're saying, just so that before we start moving forward. I can see that we've got quite a few online this evening, so just want to make sure that everyone can hear us. Fantastic. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, Jim. Right. Some of you might have logged in last week, and me and Jim actually did a combined webinar last week, and it was about the similar topic about how Jim has acquired 20 properties within 12 months. But okay, if you've got a deposit, you could say that's quite easy to do. But one thing that Jim's done and he's mastered is that he's learned how to just get landlords throw properties at him. Actually, just throw the keys at him. He doesn't want any, well, they don't want any deposit. They don't want anything. But more importantly, today, you guys can learn how he's done that. So I'm going to pass you over to Jim. If there are any questions that you need to ask, please go and put them in the question section, and I'll be flicking through it all the way through. So without further ado, Jim, all over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Arsh. Yeah, it's great to be on tonight, and thanks for joining us on the webinar. I'm sure we're going to have loads of fun tonight, and I say get the questions going. I don't want to spend too much time talking. I want to answer what you want to know about this. Yes, I've acquired 20 properties for nothing, and I did that after the recession because you couldn't get finance, and it's a change of approach. Before I used to like to buy properties. Now I find it's easier to get properties from people who own them already and set up an agreement that I can rent the property. There's nothing illegal about this. People get a bit worried about it. I'm quite open about it. I agree with the owner of the property that I will take on the management of the property and I will turn it into an HMO. I don't use the word HMO because a lot of people don't know what it means. An HMO is a shared house, multi-let, whatever you want to call it. I just say I let the property by the room. And that's how I'm going to be able to afford to pay the owner a guaranteed rent. Because the owner of the property is usually fed up with running it themselves. A lot of people get fed up doing the business that they all seem to want to join, which is be a landlord. They love the idea of owning a property, but the day-to-day dealing with tenants grinds them down. I'm lucky I've got over 100 HMOs. I've got staff who do the day-to-day management. And the fun part of it for me is getting hold of the properties. So I've got these properties. The recession put a stop to being able to get finance. And then I just found I could pick the properties up using what's called rent-to-rent. The difference between a rent-to-rent, by the way, I'm not sure if all the listeners know this, Arsh. A rent-to-rent is the basic part of it. If you can add on to that the right to buy the property, it's called a lease option. So rent-to-rent is the starting point. You have the right to take the property, re-rent it out, and I say buy the room. I turn it into an HMO. That requires a bit of money. You've got to spend some money converting the property. And if the owner gives you the right to buy it, then as circumstances improve, you can then exercise the option to buy the property, but you haven't got any obligation to buy the property. It's an option, so you can, if you want, do so. And I find that it's not only tired landlords, it's quite often distressed sellers, people who've got a second property and don't know what to do with it. And they've thought about letting it out but never got round to doing it. It's whatever. You are providing a very simple service for them. Do not use the word, by the way. This is very important. Don't talk to them about lease options. Don't talk to them about rent to rent. Say to them, I will give you a guaranteed rent for your property, and I'm responsible for everything else. That's the key to it. They want, everyone's, I think, about heart lazy, and they just want to know they can sit on their island, drinking their pina coladas or whatever, and get a guaranteed rent from the property. I take responsibility, and this is all down to how you want to do it yourself. I take responsibility for all the repairs. I might as well anyway, because my tenants will damage the property, so I'm going to have to repair it. Take responsibility for all the repairs, but not the structure of the building. But generally, that's not too much of a problem, because most of the structural problems are covered by the building's insurance. There is no voids, there's no bad debts, so they don't have to worry about voids and bad debts. They don't have to worry about letting fees. I don't charge any letting fees. I also pay for the insurance. And do you know, sorry, you're going to say, Arsh?
No, okay. Well, Jim, I think we've given them a bit too much of an introduction.
Oh, wait. Okay, let's get going.
Right, okay. So hopefully Jim's give you just a bit of a snippet as what we're going to be talking about in tonight's webinar. I'm just very conscious that I'm always looking at the questions. Someone's asked, can you do a HMO anywhere in the UK? Well, the answer is yes, providing that you're not in an area where there's Article 4. For anyone that doesn't know what Article 4 is, Article 4 is legislation that's been brought out recently where governments are trying to restrict the amount of HMOs being set up. So the one thing that you would need to do, if a HMO is a strategy that you're looking to do, check with your council first whether Article 4 is operating within your area. If it is, you will require planning permission, whether it's a one bed into any kind of, or anything up, anything that constitutes a HMO.
You do know, Arsh, that a lot of people are very worried about that. And they say, oh, Article 4 stops it. It doesn't. Local authorities just want to control the growth of HMOs. And if they bring an article, they've got to tell you where they will grant HMOs and where they won't. So if you go on the website, they should there tell you you can. So someone's asking, can you do it in Gloucestershire and Shropshire? I don't know because I'm not in that area, but I suspect you can. Even as an Article 4, they'll say certain areas we've got too many HMOs in, but you can do HMOs in this area provided certain criteria are complied with.
Okay, so Jim, what me and Jim have decided is that we're going to give you a very basic an introduction into what a HMO is, because I appreciate that we've got people of all ranges of knowledge on tonight's webinar. And just so that you know, we've got over 400 people logged in listening to this call right now. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for your time. I appreciate that. You could be doing a million and one things. I know that EastEnders has just finished. But you've taken the initiative, and hopefully by what you hear today, you can actually go out. We're going to give you all the knowledge that you require to actually go and do this strategy tomorrow. And the only person that's stopping you from doing that is you. So hopefully listen carefully and listen to what Jim's got to say, because we're going to keep it straight to the point and hopefully on time. So Jim, tonight we're not gonna throw away any. We're not gonna talk about any fluff. We're not going to talk about any BS or theory. We're just going to say it as it is. Do you agree with that, Jim?
Absolutely right. There's an interesting question here from Fazil. He's saying about a landlord who was jailed for causing the death of a tenant. I can understand this fear that people have. You're going to do something, the unknown, and we fear the unknown. But I bet, Fazil, you drive, and there's probably hundreds of drivers imprisoned every week for dangerous driving. Well, you don't worry about that and the deaths that are caused. It's very unusual for a landlord to be in prison. And I'll show talk about later how you can minimize the risk by providing good fire standards in your property. So there won't be anything to worry about there. You can sleep sound at night on that one.
Okay, perfect. Right, Jim. So moving on, let's just talk about some of the basics, but we don't want to spend too much time here.
Go on.
So what's the basics of a HMO?
An HMO is just simply let to 3 unrelated people. So if you let a property to 3 unrelated people, that's an HMO. Simple as that. You have to comply with the legislation. Whether you think it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. There's a lot more protection for people who live in a shared house than there is for single lets. Simple. Simply put, okay?
Perfect. Okay, so what's some of the myths about HMOs?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of worry put out about HMOs. They all need a license. I've got over 100 HMOs, and I think now my licenses are down to less than 10 of them need licenses. It takes time. Yeah, so does looking after property take time. Lots of regulations there are, but you're easy enough to learn. I do a course on showing you how to turn a property from acquire a property using the lease options approach and all the regulations. And we do it in a few hours. So it's not that difficult to do. Yes, there's an expense in setting up an HMO. The expense is often based on what the local authority require you to do to the property, but it's not prohibitive by any means. So it's all within the capabilities of all of you out there to set up your own HMO. Just go for it.
Okay, is it expensive to set up, Jim?
I don't. Well, as I said, it depends on what your local authority require of you. Most of the time, it's the fire safety, and local authorities around the country vary in their approach. I'm not going to get into the politics of that one. Some are very. Some people would say over the top, but just go with them. If that's what they want, do that, and it costs you probably a few thousand. Others are very relaxed; they just want a few smoke detectors, and that they're happy with that. But if you talk to your local authority, they will guide you. And the beauty of talking to your local authorities is you can hide behind them by saying, well, I did what my local authority wanted me to do. So in some ways, though I'm sometimes accused of being a bit anti-local authority because I feel they often require a lot of stupid things, the fact that they're reasonable, I'd go with it and follow what their advice is, and then you can't go far wrong. It's not difficult. I started off doing HMOs, and then people said, you're better off doing single lets. I moved into the single let market, and I then went back out of the single let market and started doing HMOs because the profit is so much greater by doing HMOs. I still got about 30 single lets. A lot of them, as they're empty, I turn them into HMOs. Some are not suitable for multi-letting, so I just leave them as single lets. So it's quite easy. When you know how, but everything's easy when you know how. But if you have a look at the next slide, this gives you an idea. If you take a long-term view on it, the first property I bought cost me $35,000 in 1991. By the time we got to 2007, and it's probably very similar now, it was valued at $350,000. So in 17 years, it went from 35k to 350,000 in value. But value is almost meaningless because I'm not going to sell it. Why? Because it's making me an income, a gross income of 36,000. It's unbelievable. I have one rules. I've just written a book, and within it, it's one I've included the rules of being a landlord. And one of the rules you'll find is in 20 years, what you pay for the property is what you'll be getting in rent if you turn it into a multi-let. You cannot believe that. If you go back through history, recent history from the war, you'll find most landlords over a 20-year period will find what they paid for the property will be what they're getting. In 95, I did my first rent to rent. Well, I had a right to buy it, so I suppose you could have called it a delayed completion. I took a property, no money down, and paid the owner over a period of time. And that was back in 95 when it wasn't considered so sexy then. I don't know why I didn't continue doing more of that at the time. It just didn't seem to fit into my psyche at the time. But once I got into it after 2008, I just went for it as they came up.
Okay, right. So have we just talked about your first HMO?
We've talked about it. Have you been able to sleep there, Arsh?
I have.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've talked about the HMO. Shall we move on from the first one? As I explained, that gives you an idea of the profits you can have. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, this. It took 20 years to get there. But the beauty of doing an HMO is usually you can start making money out of it after about the first year. So you can very quickly start replacing your income and become independent if you wish to do so. Or you can go to work. I had best part of 20 HMOs, and I still had a full-time job. I like the fact that I had the independence of running my own properties, and at the same time, I love my job. And one of the things you can love makes you love your job a lot more, strange enough, is the fact that you know you can leave it. If you're trapped in your job and you think, God, I've got to go to work, that's a different attitude to, yeah, I'm going to work because I want to go to work. Changes your whole attitude on life. So it's a good idea to be that, have that ability to choose, and makes things so much easier.
So just talk us about talk about some of the figures for this HMO.
Yeah, this is a typical HMO we've got on the slide now. You take a single let house, say something like a 2 or 3 bedroom house. In my area, you get about 100 quid a week. That's what, 440 a month, 5,200 per annum. Assume you've got a mortgage of 3,200 on it. You'll have a cash flow of 2,000. I don't want to talk too fast about figures, but I want to get this idea of cash flow. That's the difference between the gross rent and your mortgage. If you do the same with an HMO, the ideal figure is to have about 6 rooms on HMO, because that fits within planning easily, because you're allowed to have up to 6 sharing an HMO, possibly a bit more, depends on the size of the property and the attitude of your local authority, but 6 works nicely. In my area, we get about 65 quid for a room, so the same property turned into an HMO with 6 tenants, gross is 20 grand, 20,280. Take off the mortgage, you've got something like 17 grand income, which is a lot more than £2,000 cash flow, even allowing for expenses. I don't want to bore us, we can skip over the expenses, can't we? But some landlords pay for the council tax, heating, electricity, water rates. If you pay all of it, if that's what you want to do for your tenants, I find on average, analysing over 100 HMOs I operate, it costs 3,600. But you can cut back on that. And again, we'll tell you a bit more about that as well.
Okay.
We're next.
Talking about how much your cash flow you can get from one HMO.
One HMO it varies on the particular circumstances, but you can get as much as 7 times the income from one HMO, maybe sometimes more than you would do from a single let. I usually say it's between 4 times and 10 times the income can be obtained from one property by multi-letting it.
Perfect. Okay.
And the beauty of doing this, providing HMOs, is it allows you to use properties that wouldn't be ideal for single lets. I prefer properties that are not ideal for single let because they tend to be cheaper. And if you're looking to do the lease option, these are properties that sometimes owners have great difficulty getting rid of, and they can't find of any use to it. You may say to them, why don't they do rent to rent? Why don't they, in fact, turn them into HMOs themselves? A lot of people just haven't got the interest in doing it, or they haven't got the knowledge, which is available. Arsh and I both run HMOs, and we're both happy to share our experience with you. So don't let that put you off. Here's an interesting question. How do you turn a 2-bedroom house, I can't quite read the whole thing, how do you turn a 2-bedroom house into a 6-bed HMO? Where do the extra rooms come from? Well, it doesn't take too much to work out. If you've got a 2-bedroom house, that'll probably have 2 good double rooms. And you could turn those 2 double rooms into 4 rooms by splitting them. So there you are, you've got your 4 rooms, and then you've got downstairs rooms, which again you could split. So if you want to have, say, a communal lounge, you could split one of the rooms, you get the 6 rooms, share kitchen, share bathroom.
Okay.
Simple.
Someone's just asked, can the neighbours object to the conversion?
I'm afraid not. We're in a free country, and people are allowed to do what they want with their own property as long as they don't unreasonably interfere with your neighbours. But here's a tip I found from experience. I like a simple, easy life. I don't want trouble and problems. So it's better not to have an HMO next to owner-occupiers. They don't like it. Would you? I wouldn't like to see a house next door turned to me into an HMO. So keep your HMOs away from owner-occupiers, next to pubs, scrapyards, roads, that type of thing. And then you get less problems. Neighbours complain to the local authority. The local authorities feel they have to take action. So be careful where you select your HMOs.
Okay.
The minimum room sizes, this again is down to your local authority. Most local authorities require a minimum of 65 square feet, or if you want to put it the other way, 6.5 square metres. So repeat that, 65 square feet, 6.5 square metres. And you've got to have a window. An opening window is the minimum size. Now, it's your client group as to how bigger or larger a property you provide. I find with the DSS market, youngsters, they're quite happy to have a room like that. They're more concerned with the fact they've got their own room, it's warm, it's secure, than having space. With the DSS market, they've got very few possessions. They don't need that much space. While if you've got working tenants, the more affluent want bigger, more space. So you might be better off providing something like 100 square feet or 10 square meters.
Okay. So how did you get your, just very briefly, how did you get your HMOs?
Most of the HMOs I acquired, I bought. I did it the old way. We tend to get stuck in ruts, and it's things like the recession which kick you out of that. All these, I find in life, Arsh, you've been much younger than I am. You go through things and you hit black clouds in this property business. And every black cloud I've hit seems to have a silver lining. The recession stopped me being able to buy. I was buying at that time, had 10 deals on the go. So that goes to show how fast I was expanding pre-2008. And it all came to a stop, sudden jerking stop. But then other opportunities arise, like doing rent-to-rent and lease options. The beauty of buying a property is if you turn it into an HMO, you get it valued on income. A lot of people don't understand this value on income. We give them a lot of content here that's very fast. And I do courses. Arsh and I both do courses on HMOs, and we explain this aspect to you about valuing on income. This is how all commercial property is valued, and you can have an HMO doing this. This increases the value quite considerably and allows you to get your purchase price back out and the conversion cost. And that's the beauty. If you do a rent-to-rent with the right to buy, it enables you to get, if you exercise the right to buy, you can get your conversion cost back and even the purchase price back. So you end up with your property for nothing because it's you've got all your money back. You may have to put money in to start with, but you end up with all your money back out. Fantastic business. I know nothing that could beat it.
So what does the old way involve then, Jim?
The old way, the problem about the old way is it incurs you cost and risk. I've been doing it for a number of years, and I found that about 20% of my deals went pear-shaped. In other words, they didn't work. Sellers backed out. This year, I still buy properties as well as doing rent to rent. And last year, 2 deals didn't complete. Mainly because both were the same. The sellers decided not to go ahead, withdrew the market. You end up with lost valuation fees, lost legal fees. That's the way the English legal system works. You go and buy a property, and the seller changes their mind. You've lost the money. It's so annoying. Someone's asked a question here. Can we answer a question here, Jim?
Yeah,
what
sure.
about sound issues? Would we need to soundproof them in any way? I soundproof my properties when I split the rooms up. So it's a good idea to use soundproofing. There are techniques for soundproofing that are not necessarily that expensive. Depends, again, it comes down to local authorities. Some local authorities say if you split the rooms, you've got to soundproof it, and it can be expensive. It very much depends on the attitude of your local authority as to what you're doing. But as a general rule, I found soundproofing also gives good insulation qualities as well, has lots of advantages to it. If you're interested in doing a joint venture with me, I do JVs where I do all the work. I acquire the properties, set it up, convert it, and rent it out for you. All you have to do is sign the check and own the property. So I do the whole lot for you. I find the acquiring the properties is an exciting part of it. So if you want to JV with me, I'll only JV in my area where I can keep an eye on the properties. One of my golden rules is you've got to be able to touch your property. You've got to be within line of sight of where you are.
Okay, so if you think that you like what you've heard so far, and you want to actually JV with Jim, which means that you've got cash to spend on property, but you may not have the experience or knowledge that Jim has, you're more than welcome to email myself, which is Arsh, ARSH, at arshellahi.com. I'll be putting it out on the chat on the right hand corner. Is that if my email address is going to be on the right hand side. If you want a JV pack, if you send me an email just saying JV pack, we'll arrange for them to come out to you first thing tomorrow. Right, Jim. We've talked about the old way, and the old way is the old way. Now, just so that you know, Jim, within the last 12 months, has acquired 20 properties in 12 months. Now, since May last year, I've acquired 5, 12. I'm not so far away. I've acquired 14 properties since May last year. So I'm about 8 months in. Sorry, maybe even slightly longer than 9 months in. And I can vouch for everything that Jim says because it is a very straightforward way. And providing that you do it correctly, you don't have to pay anything to gain the property. But yet you get all this cash flow from day one. Now, with everything, yes, we are talking about rent to rent, but with everything, we're going to be telling you about how to do it. And more importantly, it's almost very much like BMV, where you've got to understand what to say to the vendor. Or if you were going to buy a property, you need to be able to explain yourself clearly to the vendor in order to get the discount. It's exactly the same concept. Instead of this time, you're trying to persuade the landlord of the property to let you have control of his property for the next 10 years. Isn't that right, Jim?
That's right. Yeah, it's a whole different strategy to buying properties. You're looking with people who are struggling. So you've got to understand their problem and see it from their point of view and give them the solution that fits. It's a win-win for you and win-win for them. There's stories are out there about people going around just taking properties, pretending that they are tenants and then multi-letting it. This is not it. We're up front. We tell them what we're going to do. It's actually an advantage. The reason I can give you a guaranteed rent is the fact that I'm going to be able to letting it by the room, and I will make quite a bit of money out of doing this. So there is no deception in it. They're perfectly clear as to what they're doing. What question here? What are the dangers of you having too many HMOs in an area? Yeah, the worry about saturating an area does worry me. But I've never got to that point. Even though I've got 100 HMOs, I've never seen any examples of it being a saturation. It seems to be an increasing demand for HMOs, and I find it amazing. All the figures, if you look at the statistics, which I'm always a bit dubious about looking at stats, show that there's going to be an explosion in demand for multi-lets. So it's a growing market.
Right, okay. So, Jim, what do you require or what do you need to do?
Right. The starting point is with this business is understand what you're going to do and know what you want. If you're not sure what you want, that'll be go on to the owner and they won't have confidence with you. So you need to you need to completely understand what you're going to be doing in this. And then my starting point is I have an agreement, written agreement that I use for the landlord. It's not an AST. It's strictly speaking, it's called a lease. So you have your agreement, and then you can clearly go through your written agreement, and explain to the owner these are the terms of your agreement. That's the starting point with this agreement. Now, going to tell them about this, Arsh?
Okay, so one thing that me and Jim have spoken about is that last time we put the webinar out is that we're actually running a course which is going to be this weekend, but I appreciate that it's very short notice for a lot. So we're actually going to be rerunning the course in April as well. Now we're asked quite a few questions that some people don't actually want to attend a course, but just want all the documents because it is such a simple strategy. People want the documents in order to be able to actually go out and do it. So what we've done is that today, and only for today, is that if you want the documents that we have, which you can't buy from anywhere else, we're allowing you to buy them where you don't have to come on a course, you don't have to come and listen to me and Jim in a classroom or anything like that. But more importantly, you have access to both me and Jim to ask and bounce questions off anytime that you need to. And you can even have an hour session on the phone with Jim. You get that tonight for $4.50. So if you think that's of interest, what I'm going to do in the bottom right hand corner, I'm just going to put a link there where you can potentially purchase that. But by all means, you're more than welcome to listen to the rest of the presentation. But we think you can do this in your area. Me and Jim aren't rocket scientists. Is that right, Jim?
No, I mean, I did it. I staggered into it. Arsh came along, saw what I did. He borrowed my agreement and went away and did it himself. And within, say, 8 months, has done 14 properties. You're doing a service to people who can't manage their own properties. As long as you know what you're doing, understand that. If you don't want to come on the course, I can't see why they don't want to come and see us and learn about it. But Wolverhampton is a bit of a hike for some people. We can give you the paperwork. You'll get all the course material that we'd have. You can have the agreement I use with my landlords. And what else are we throwing in?
I'll tell you what, Jim.
Yep.
Let's put a whole list
package. You tell them about the package.
Okay, so what you're going to be offering is that we're going to be giving you the rent-to-rent agreement, which has helped Jim acquire 20 plus properties within the last 12 months.
And you got 14.
I've got 14 as well.
Yes.
And so that's not normally for sale. That's something that Jim has created, and with a bit of my knowledge, we've kind of tailored, and it works every time. We don't go out to a property without bringing the property back in. Is that true? Fair to say, Jim?
You're more successful than I am. Most of it comes. Sometimes it takes a bit of time. The owners are a bit reluctant to deal. I say it's going to be, it will be. I don't spend too much time over it. I explain to the owner what I can do for them. I leave it to them to decide what they want to do. There's no high pressure sale. It's not even a sale. It's a resolution to their problems. Most of the time, it's where the owners are hurting. They can't sell their properties. They're struggling financially to pay for their property. I take over the property for them. Or they may struggle with renting the properties. They just get fed up dealing with tenants. Tenants can be wearing. I spread the risk. If they're doing a single let property, the tenant doesn't pay, they've lost all their income. I have 6 people in the property. One person doesn't pay. Hey ho, I've got 5 others who are paying. So we're going to give you the whole agreement. You're getting the course material, you get the lease agreement, and also you get my HMO manual, which is the distillation of 20 years experience. The manual itself normally sells for £597. If you go on my website, you'll see how to become a multi-millionaire HMO landlord. Sells for £597. So you're getting that thrown in, you're getting the lease option thrown in, and you're getting the course material that we do on the day, which is this Saturday. We're running a course on how to acquire properties for nothing and multi-let them. You can have all that sent out to you tomorrow if you book tonight, and it only costs you £450. £450 to set you up, be able to acquire properties for nothing. Amazing deal that is.
Okay, so moving forward then, Jim, let's talk about what they require to do a rent-to-rent. Mm-hmm. What is it exactly that they need to require? Do you require a solicitor?
I'll tell you what, I did the cautious thing. When I first started doing this after 2008, a lot of people who did it, like Rick Otten and the other trainers who talked about it, because I go on all these courses and I listen to what they have to say. It gives you the confidence to be able to go ahead and do it yourself. And they're saying you should use a solicitor. The problem is the first 3 deals I tried all got screwed up by solicitors. Solicitors take time. They start being very negative. I found that it didn't work for me. You decide what you want to do. I start off with saying, right, here's the deal. Here's my agreement. Go through it and we get it agreed. Some people talk about get your heads of agreement sorted out. Different way of looking at it, heads of agreement, and then pass it on to the solicitors. You've sorted the deal out. But if you leave it for too long, solicitors can cause problems with it. But it does make it a better deal in as much as having a solicitor sorted out gives it, I suppose, a stamp of authority. But I don't. Make your own decision. There is different ways of doing everything. I've been doing it now for a period of time. I'm quite confident in the way I've done it. As I said, I did my first one back in '95, and I've done a few others over that period of time, but it was not something as a main strategy. I just wanted to go out and buy because that was in my head. That's how I thought. Now I do rent to rents. It's another way of doing it. They're all just different tools you can use. It's so simple.
So what's it involve?
The agreement, I have a simple agreement, it has about 18 terms in it. I go through with the owner and say, this is what we've agreed to. And if they want to go ahead, they sign it. You find once they sign the agreement, the deal tends to get done. That solves the problem. They're happy. They've got rid of their problem. The general approach I find from most of the owners is they've got a problem. I've solved it for them, and they go away quite happy. Sometimes even laughing that I've taken on what they consider to be a turkey and a problem, a nightmare for them. And I've taken it away, done it, agreed to pay them a guaranteed rent, and they've got no more worries.
Jim, do you mind if I just butt in
sure.
there? Okay, that's a great example, because I was approached by a landlord and he had a property which had 5 flats in. And he's been using a few management agencies, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, he couldn't let them out. Now, it was a property that had 5 single studios in, and he said to me, "Arsh, okay, you can have them. I normally rent them out at £100 a week. You can have them for £70 each." And to be perfectly honest, at that point, I just laughed and I walked away and said, "Unfortunately, I won't be making any money in that deal. I bet you'll be sitting somewhere very nice, drinking your pina colada," as Jim says it. And so we started to then really start to negotiate. He started saying 70. We eventually came down. He then went down to 65. Guess what I actually got it down to? Each flat, I'm only paying him £52 a week. Now, as soon as I signed the agreements for that, I've now got them rented out each flat at £105 a week. So that property alone is generating me over £250 a week. £250 times 52 weeks, Jim?
That's a lot of money. A lot of people work all week for that kind of money. And you lucky bugger, have done that by taking over.
Actually, Jim, you told me not to take it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Why did I do that?
But no, either way, like I said, we what we did is that we sat down, we agreed the costs, we then agreed the terms. I look after the maintenance internally. The landlord looks after the structure. The one thing that I did with this property is that the landlord had just put some new boilers in, so we had a 5-year warranty with the boilers. So I was quite lucky in that respect. But generally, what I try and tend to do is that with a rent to rent, I try and get the landlord to take out a boiler insurance cover, which will cost them over a year. It's about, depending on which company you go with, can cost anything from £12 a month, which the landlord's happy to do. Some people are saying, is this a conflicting information? Is this conflicting if you do the owners tell the mortgage companies? Jim, what would you say?
Right. Yeah. The problem is all these things are quite complex. There's no simple answer to them. Some mortgage companies are quite happy to allow the owners to rent, and they'll give permission. Others are not so keen on doing this. So if that's a concern, talk to the mortgage company and find out what their attitude is towards it. And if they say no, then just don't go ahead. Not every deal will work. So you find out what the criteria is. Even in residential mortgages, where people are struggling to sell the properties, mortgage companies have been told to be agreeable to various alternatives rather than allowing the people to be repossessed. And they can often be quite agreeable to this whole strategy. So if it worries you, talk to them, find out what you want to do. What's this one saying? If you don't own the property, how can you go splitting the room? Sure, you have to have permission. Yeah, of course. And major refurbishments, you got permission. You get the permission from the owner. It's in the agreement. You have the right to do this. I never talk about it as such. by saying I'm going to change the property, I put the approach over that I will be improving the property. I'm turning it from a 2-bedroom house into a 4-bedroom house. That will increase its value. It's for the owner to decide. If the owners don't want it, the deal doesn't happen. So it's not something that you are imposing on people. I'm totally upfront, brutally honest as to how I go about doing it. And I think that's the right way of approaching it. You clearly explain to them, it's in the agreement to the owners, this is what you're going to be doing with the property. And they either take it or leave it as to what you want to do. How does the council tax work? Well, with an HMO, the owner is legally responsible for paying the council. The landlord, is legally responsible for paying the council tax on an HMO. You don't have to be creditworthy to use this way. One of the problems, some people have had the credit ratings wrecked by the recession. So a rent-to-rent is really the deciding of your creditworthiness is the owner of the property, and therefore you don't have to worry about it. The important thing is there are certain skills and techniques you need to know to be able to do this. Arsh and I have learnt over a period of time. Arsh is a quick learner. I perfected my techniques by practice, by going out and doing it. Arsh came along, saw what I did, and learned himself. And we're quite happy to share this knowledge and skills of how about going about acquiring property and turning it into a rent-to-rent from taking a property, no cost to you, and then multi-letting it. There is a cost in turning it into an HMO. Let's not pretend about that. Pretend there is a cost in doing this. Though if you took Arsh's flats, they were already existing flats. He had 5 flats handed to him by the owner who just didn't want the problem of management of dealing with this, got fed up with dealing with letting agents, and just wanted a guaranteed rent. I was prepared to take, in effect, 50% of the rental income for the peace of mind that he knew he didn't have to do any more or be any more involved in the property.
Right.
So
Jim, I'm gonna stop you right there.
Yeah,
because one thing that me and Jim have perfected is the ability to eliminate any risk from ourselves. And the reason why I say that, and I think it's an important point to make, is that when we go out and we meet a landlord, the landlord has to sign an agreement and say that he's letting the property to us for a minimum of 5 years or 60 months. But our commitment to that landlord at any one point is a month's notice. So we can walk away and hand the keys back to a landlord if that property is not performing for us. And the risk to us is only 1 month's rent.
Yeah, I mean, I put that in the agreement when I was offered a property I wasn't very sure about. And the owner was quite keen for me. He was pushing me to take the property on. So I said to him, I'm not sure about this. So I put the break clause in. I've never broken a deal with the properties. I'm amazed just what rents out there. Properties I would never dreamed even of looking at, never mind buying, I found have worked surprisingly well for rent. There seems to be demand everywhere for properties. So the break clause was put in there really for my own comfort and give me the confidence to go ahead and take on the property. If you put your effort into it and market it well, I found everything lets. Usually, it's if it's slow, you find that you can let to DSS tenants, and DSS tenants is an area that Arsh has got far greater experience than I have in this area because Arsh specialises in DSS. I was a late comer to the DSS market. I was a reluctant DSS landlord, mainly during the recession. That's all the tenants that we could find, and it works. There is a market, but DSS is a lot more complicated than working tenants. You need to understand what you're doing with housing benefit tenants. DSS means housing benefit tenants, and they have their charm. The great beauty of a housing benefit tenant is there's no risk of losing their job. And the other thing I love about some of them is they'll stay with you for a very, very long time. If you give them what they want and keep them happy, you've got a long-term tenant. The sad fact about working tenants is most of them are on the way up. and they don't want to stay in an HMO for that long. So they come and they move on, buy their own flats, or move on for some other area. We're going to show them some other properties. Shall we answer some of the questions? How do you find landlords that want to do rent to rent? Who's that question from? I don't know. Raju. How do you find them? It's a bit like pink cars. Tonight, if you're going out, keep an eye open for a pink car. Once you start looking, you will find. There is so many different ways. And we'll talk about this on the course. I've got over 20 HMOs, and I've got about probably 10 different ways I acquired those. We're happy to explain this. But again, like so many of these things, it's not a simple 1 minute answer to the whole thing. But the biggest answer I'd say is, are you prepared to go ahead and take on the property? Once you start looking, that you'll find they come to you. How do you find your properties, Arsh?
Generally speaking, I find, for those that are on my friends list on Facebook, I actually put through an advert in my local paper. I want to rent your property off you, 5 to 10 years, guaranteed rent. And all it is says, call Arsh and my mobile number. But then, that's the easy part. It's the easy part. The hardest part is understanding what a landlord wants and how you can find that middle ground, which both of you are going to be happy with. Someone asked, is that if you give a month's if you give a month break clause in the contracts, then the landlord is getting no cover. Why would they sign? Is it just a case that they do not understand the contract? No, we clearly spell it out to them. The property has to work for us. If we've got a property and we've taken a property on and we can't let it and it's been vacant, all it's doing is putting a drain or a strain on our business. So I want to be able to be in a position where I can hand it back to the landlord at any one point. We explain this to the landlord from day one. If they're not happy with the terms in the lease, like we said, we walk away. As we turn one property down, another one will come along. There's no shortage of properties.
Yeah, I agree with you, Arsh. We've thoroughly explained to them what the situation is. And sometimes landlords owners of the properties pick up on this and say to me, what about this month break clause? I explain to them why the reason it's there. I've never exercised that break clause, but look at it from their point of view. With a lot of people, the decision is they've got the property empty. Here is an opportunity for them to get someone to take it over for them. Or sometimes it's even handing the keys back to the lender. So they are in a tight situation, and it's a way of sort of sharing the risk. Sometimes we negotiate on it. Well, I do. I don't know if Arsh does. People say, well, a month's not, it's too short a period of time. I say to them, well, how long would you like? What would you feel comfortable with? You understand the situation we've got here. I'm taking a risk on. I'm looking after your property. What is the worst going to happen? I'll be handing the property back. I've looked after it. I've been paying you a rent for the period of time I've taken it. I've given you a month or 2 months or 3 months notice to hand it back. There's no risk. I'm maintaining it and looking after it. I'm paying the insurance. That is better than the situation where a lot of people have, where the property's just empty because they haven't got the time, the energy, or the understanding to be able to rent it out.
And just so that you know, this doesn't just happen on your 2 or your 3 bed properties. I got approached by a person who had a 19-bed care home. He started asking for £3,000 to £4,000 a month. I walked away. He actually came back and we started talking. I now got that 19-bed care home where I'm paying him £1,500 a month, but that £1,500 a month rent that I pay, which is £18,000 a year, is now generating me £90,000 in rental income. You do the maths.
That's good. But you took the risk of doing this.
I took the risk. It's cost me it cost me nothing to get in because I didn't give him a deposit, didn't give him any rent in advance. I pay him a rent a month in arrears. And if I have to walk away at any one point, he wanted me to give him a 6-year break clause. No chance. My break clause is a month. After that, anything after that, I'm walking away. So let's move on. So we're going to quickly go through some of these properties, Jim. Yeah. And each property, 30-second snapshot. Right. Where is it? How did you come across it? and what it generates. So,
Okay.
example one.
Example one, they're all within 10 minutes of where I am. So this brings in £16,000 after I'm paying the owner's rent and the utilities. So it's a £16,000 gross income that doesn't allow for voids, bad debts, or maintenance. So I've got to take out of that 16,000 the voids, bad debts, and maintenance. But there's clear it's clear profit. And I got that from a tired landlord. I've got about 3 of his properties. He just handed them to me. As they came empty, he just hands them over to me and says, there you are, Jim. Your problem. I've got other things to do, strangely enough. This example number 2 is someone who bought the property, bought it cheap, but never got round to being a landlord. He just couldn't quite get it together. He had problems with builders. A tale of woe was that one. This one was the big one, is existing HMO landlord. He got a lot of experience in the business, but it was just too far out of his area for him to manage. Letting agents let him down. I took it over, and this one is amazingly profitable. Example 3. This is just a little flat. It was a 2-bedroom flat. We split the rooms up to enable us to have 5 tenants in the property, bringing an income of near on £10,000 out of that property. Quite a nice little property. These I like. This is an old ex-pub. We're using the top floor. I don't use the bottom floor, and it's making me 13k. I could convert the ground floor. Obviously, you've got to get permission to do that. The owner's given me permission. I'm talking about planning and building control, and I could use the ground floor if I wish to. But it's making me a comfortable income. I'm not sure whether I want to go to the cost of doing that currently, but I'll look upon it in the future. I've got a few years to be able to do this, to convert the property. You want to tell us about the course?
Okay, Jim. So don't worry, we haven't finished yet. But one thing I do want to say is that we are running a course. It's a weekend course. Our first one's being this Saturday, Saturday the 8th. Next one's going to be Saturday the 5th of April. So if you can't make the first date, by all means, please have a look at coming to us to visit us on the 5th. So what we're going to be looking at is as you can appreciate, we can only tell you so much within an hour, but within a day, you can learn the strategy from A to Z. So where to advertise, how to advertise, who to meet, what to say to the owner, how to address it so that you're going to be coming back with the properties. But more importantly, we'll be giving you real life examples and a role. We're going to be doing a bit of role play. So Jim will act as a landlord. You act as a person wanting his property. And hopefully by the end of it, you would have convinced Jim that you're the right person to rent his property to. Finally, the biggest thing is the paperwork that you use to seal the deal. If you haven't got the right documents in place, unfortunately, you're not walking away with that property. Now, the price for that 1 day alone is $497, but don't worry, that's not the be all and end all, because you're not going to be paying $497. Now, on the next day, I think this is a really important course, because it's all very well you acquiring so many properties and getting all the tenants for these properties. But the one thing that you need to understand is once you've got these tenants, if there's ever a problem, how do you get your tenants out quickly and cost effectively? Jim has created a system that has been evicting tenants and has managed to reduce the time that it takes to evict a tenant from 27 weeks to only 9 weeks, and how to get an immediate court date. Again, he will be showing you how to go through all the paperwork, and get it through so that you actually get possession order.
And it only takes 9 weeks. Very simple. I've done so many. I've now done over 250 evictions. I've perfected a system that anyone can do it. It's used by my staff. I can show you how to do it, and we'll be doing that on the Sunday. So the Saturday, you got the options course, and if you want, you can do the Sunday. We'll do a special package where you can do both courses for £597. Also, you have my HMO Multimillionaire HMO manual thrown in for free if you book both courses.
Okay, Jim. like I said, a lot of people can't make courses purely because they've got work commitments, they've got other commitments, and I completely appreciate that. One thing that we say to people is that if you can't make the course, by all means, you're more than welcome to just take the documents, and the documents are very simply all the documents that you require to go out and do this tomorrow. In the bottom right hand corner, I've I've supplied 2 links there. So if you think that the course is for you, please click on the second link. If you don't want the course, but you want all the documents to be able to go out and implement this strategy tomorrow, but more importantly, have me and Jim as almost like, would you say, a mentor role where they can call us?
You can book a call with me for an hour, and Arsh is much more generous with his time. You can phone him up or text him and ask questions of him on an ad hoc basis. But I'm quite happy to do a pre-booked 1 hour. If you book tonight, you can buy that course material. If you've got any questions, we can have an hour's one-to-one, which you can book with me.
Okay. Right, Jim. But that's not all. Because you can have all the documents for $4.50 and a draft copy of Jim's forthcoming book. What's the book called, Jim?
I'd love perhaps the viewers or listeners can come up with an idea. I thought about Tales from an HMO Landlord. I'm struggling with the title. The contents there, the title, Tales from a Landlord, Tales from the Trenches, shouldn't happen to an HMO landlord. It's 200 pages of information about being an HMO landlord, the problems arising. So this is a pre-publication book. I'll throw that in with if you book tonight.
Okay, and with everything that we do, we offer a full money-back guarantee. So if you decide to buy the course, or if you decide to buy the documents, if you're not happy with it, all you got to do is call us up and say, "Arsh, Jim, not happy with what I've been supplied or what I've been taught," and we'll give you 100% of your money back guaranteed. You know, I've only been doing courses over the best part of 2 years. Jim, how long have you been in courses?
Oh, I've done courses. I think it must be back to about 2005. So it's over about 10 years now.
Has anyone ever come back to you and said, "Sorry, Jim, you need to do something"?
No, very few people have shown any dissatisfaction. It's well, of course they won't. They're usually, I think, overwhelmed by the information and help given to them. There's certainly no worry, but I can understand that some of you don't know us and you may wonder about what's been offered. So that's why we're giving you the 100% money back guarantee if you're not happy.
Okay. So just so that you know that we are open to questions, and I'm more than happy to take any questions. You've got my personal mobile number there, which is 07967 016 425. You've also got my email address and the website. So if you want details of the course, you're more than welcome to go onto my website, which is arshilahi.com. You can have a look at it. You'll notice that the course is a lot more expensive on the website. We're only doing this special offer for people who are listening into the webinar. We've still got a bit of time, Jim.
So I think that's important. If you want to book it, you've got to book it now. Make the decision now. Take action now. Book it, and you get it at a special price. Thereafter, come tomorrow, it's back to the normal price.
Okay, so finally, the one thing that me and Jim are very big in giving back into charities, and Jim does quite a lot of swimming for charity. And the one thing that I'd like to ask is that if nothing else, if you've learned a few tips, I'd like you to just appreciate that there are people out there who are less fortunate, and I'm a chairman of a charity where we're actually building a school for homeless children. So if you'd like to donate, please, again, I'm going to put another link in. I know I'm filling you all with links, but you can donate, and it's a great cause. But we've still got time, Jim. So I'd like to use this opportunity to be able to actually answer any questions. So let's go and have a look at what we got. So if you've got a question, if you don't think we've answered your question, please put it in.
Right. What question have we got here?
Right,
Let's have
let's have a quick look. Some people are saying the landlord will also incur costs converting property back to a single let once the lease period is finished.
Right. I don't. If it's a rent to rent, I'll probably end up buying it before the end of the lease period. But yes, I mean it's for the owner of the property. There will be a conversion cost back. In the agreement I have no obligation to reinstate. If the owner doesn't want that, then they take it out. Of all the people I've dealt with, very few have required a reinstatement clause. You've got to remember, a property, if you're taking a long-term lease on it, will need refurbishing every 7 to 10 years. So there will be work to be done to it anyway. Properties do not last forever.
Okay, so do you include bills or do you keep them separate? Which option do you find gets the property rented quicker?
Right, we've got two different stories here. No, if you come on the course, Arsh's view, he doesn't pay a penny. I pay everything. We come from different approaches to it. It's 6 of one and half a dozen the others. The reality is it doesn't seem to make very much difference if you pay all the bills or you don't pay the bills. It doesn't seem to make any difference to the lettability of the property.
Okay, someone's asked, what's the parking arrangements are required for a HMO? Well, I'll answer this one, Jim. For a HMO, in our location, anything up to 6 units, we don't actually require planning permission. So in that respect, we don't actually have to supply any parking. But again, this will differ from location to location. So let's just say that you're in Gloucestershire. You'd have to just check with your local council as to what the requirement is. But in the same respect, some may say yes, some may say no. But from my understanding, most of them say no. Another person asked, can I use letting agencies as I was too busy to manage a HMO? Yes, why not? Jim, do you use a letting agent?
No, I do let for other people. My experience of letting agents is they're not very good for dealing with HMOs. If you're too busy to do it, I suggest you don't do it. Sorry to be blunt about it. The best person to look after your property is you. There are people out there who like the idea of delegating out the letting to other people. There are more and more letting agents out there who are specialising in providing lettings for HMOs and rooms, but I don't find they work that particularly well. But again, it's a viewpoint, advantages for and against.
Okay, last couple of questions. What room prices do you charge then, Arsh, if bills are not included? Okay, right, this is a strange one because I've got the mindset that, and my philosophy to all the properties that I own is that if a tenant wants to use use something in their room, they've got to pay for it, which means that I put meters in all my properties. And it's probably worthwhile you come down and look at some of my properties because each of my properties are each individually metered. And so that if they want to use a heater in their room, believe it or not, they're actually paying for them to use it. But my rents are still the same. So a rent on just a normal room, £70 a week. And I would be considered expensive, especially in comparison to competitors' markets. But yet I'm always full. I've got a 98% occupancy rate and a 100% rent collection record. Someone should say that in theory I should have lots of voids because I'm probably one of the most expensive landlords in the area. And for a studio, I charge £100 a week, fully exclusive. So they've got to pay their own council tax, their own water rates, and their own electricity. Now, Jim throws that all in for the same amount of money, but yet we're still full. How does that work?
It's a logical business. It's very irrational. People try and think, well, this is... You don't apply your own rationality to the business. It's what works and what you're comfortable in providing. I feel happier that the tenants are nice and warm and all the rest of it. It's me, the bleeding heart approach. But I have got properties where I don't provide heating and they still let just as well.
Okay. Last question then is, what's the average cost to have the properties, i.e. furnish, etc.? Well, that's a simple question for me because I don't furnish the property either. So not only do I make them pay for their own bills, they've got to bring their own bed as well. And I find that we've got no problem with that. People actually like it when they're sleeping on their own bed. Whereas Jim supplies something that's fully furnished, and you
Yep.
can get fully furnished packages for a couple £100. You know, I think IKEA is probably one of the cheapest places to get furnishings. So it's all dependent on your personal taste.
I do. I'm into recycling, which is a posh word for saying I buy furniture secondhand where I can, and it doesn't cost very much to furnish the properties. Again, it's your choice. This is the beauty of talking to both Arsh and I. You see two different sides of approaches. We started differently. We've come together, we're almost come from a diametrically opposite point of view, and both systems work. And if you had three of us or HMO landlords, you probably have a third version of how it works. What percentage of your tenants are on benefits? Well, I can answer Arsh's. He has 100% because he loves DSS tenants. I don't have the same enthusiasm. I have about 70% DSS, 30% working. So again, different approach. I was forced into the DSS market by the recession, and I'd much rather have working. Is it compulsory? No, it's not compulsory to have cooking and washing facilities in each room. You can have a shared house where they share kitchen and bathroom, or the studio model is where you put en suites in and kitchenettes in the room. Two different models and approaches, and we'll talk about it on the course.
But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all very much for your time. Please, if you have enjoyed the webinar and you want to know more, I appreciate that we've given away a lot of information, but you don't know all of it yet. The only way to find out everything is by going on and booking onto the course. You can go to my website, which is www.arshellahi.com, and you can also email me. And I'm going to leave these details up for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, please come back to me, and then let's see what we can do together. You never know, we might be JVing together. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to wish you well and a very good night.
And a good night from me. And a good night from him. Thanks for listening, and all the best.